Hello everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're all doing great and ready for the story time. Today I'm gonna read you a very beautiful and popular story about a little girl whose name is Heidi. If you have the book, go get it to read it along with me. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Heidi who lived with her aunt in the Alps, the highest mountains in Switzerland. One day, Aunt Dete decided that Heidi would go and live with her grandfather, even higher in the mountains, up past the village of Dorfley. Grandfather was known by all in those parts to be a grumpy old man, and when Aunt Deta and Heidi arrived, he was not happy to learn of Aunt Deta's plan to have Heidi live with him. But Heidi was a cheerful girl who loved being in the mountains with the grandpa. So she didn't even notice that he was cranky and displeased. After a short while, grandfather began to enjoy Heidi's company. He saw that she was a smart and genuine little girl. The two grew very attached to each other. Heidi loved to help her grandfather, and she enjoyed the beautiful mountain scenery and fresh air. Heidi also made friends with a boy named Peter who lived nearby. He was the local goatherd and was very happy to have a new playmate. The new best friends spent lots of time together, playing with the goats, running through flowery meadows, and watching glorious sunsets. Then one day, Aunt Dete returned to grandfather's and announced that Heidi would be leaving. Aunt Dete had made arrangements for Heidi to live with the Seaman family in the city of Frankfurt. Heidi would go to school there and also be a companion to Clara, the Seaman's daughter. Grandfather had grown to care about Heidi very much and didn't want her to leave. And Heidi, who dearly loved her grandfather and her life in the mountains, certainly didn't want to go. They were very sad to have to say goodbye. When Heidi arrived in Frankfurt, she was taken aback by the busy city and the seaman's big, dark house. But since it was her nature to make the best of any situation, Heidi was pleased to meet the seamen, their governess, and their daughter Clara. And Clara, who was confined to a wheelchair because her legs didn't work, was thrilled to have Heidi live with her. Clara was lonely because it was hard for her to go outside and play with other children. but now she could play with Heidi. The two girls became great friends. Heidi kept Clara company and amused her with her fascination for city things, and Clara helped Heidi with her school lessons. But sometimes Heidi was a little too wild for the Seaman household, and the governess, Miss Rodenmeyer, would become very cross. She thought Heidi's idea of fun was reckless, and so she became very strict with her. Poor Heidi was not used to city life, let alone being indoors most of the time. She was used to running, skipping, and jumping around big open spaces in the mountain, and here she felt trapped. She became very sad and longed for her grandpa and her old life. As time went by, the governess became harsher in her punishment, and Heidi became more and more homesick. Then something unusual began happening at the Seaman house. Miss Rodenmeyer thought she was seeing a ghost at night time, but the governess soon realized that the figure she was seeing walking about the house at night was not a ghost, but instead it was Heidi. Heidi had become so unhappy that she was sleepwalking. So Miss Rodenmeyer gently guided Heidi back to her bed and called Aunt Dete. Aunt Dete decided that it would be best for Heidi to be examined by a doctor. The doctor immediately noticed that Heidi was under a great deal of stress. He warned her aunt that Heidi could soon become very ill if she didn't return to the mountains. And although Heidi loved Clara very much, she knew it was time for her to go back to her grandfather. Heidi was certain he missed her as much as she missed him. Aunt Dete packed Heidi's things and took her back to the mountains where indeed grandfather had been pining away for her. As Heidi approached grandfather's house, she breathed in the fresh air and started feeling better. Her cheeks became rosier, her eyes began to sparkle, and she felt full of energy again. When grandfather looked out his window, he couldn't believe his eyes. There was his little Heidi. Oh, what a beautiful day! Heidi settled right back into her mountain life, and now that she could read and write, she was able to exchange letters with Clara. Heidi wrote to her as often as she could, telling Clara that she wanted her to visit so she could meet Grandpa and Peter, play with the goats, see the green hills, blue skies, pretty flowers, and beautiful sunsets. Then one day, Heidi's wish came true. Miss Rodenmeyer brought Clara to grandfather's. Miss Rodenmeyer thought that since Heidi's health had improved so quickly, the mountain air might also help Clara. But in all the excitement of Clara's visit, Heidi spent less time than usual with Peter, who had been overjoyed to have Heidi back. This hurt Peter's feelings and made him feel very jealous of Clara. Then one afternoon, when the girls were picnicking, Peter sneaked off with Clara's wheelchair and pushed it down a hill, where it landed at the bottom with a big crash and was completely destroyed. After the picnic, the girls invited Peter to go to the other side of the hill with them to watch the sunset. But when Clara's wheelchair was nowhere to be found, Heidi asked Peter if he had seen it. Peter wouldn't answer, and his face began to turn red. "Peter, did you do something to Clara's wheelchair?" Heidi asked. "Clara can't walk. She really needs her wheelchair to move about." Peter began to feel bad about what he had done and confessed, "I destroyed the wheelchair because I was angry that you were not spending any time with me." As the two friends tried to sort things out, they were interrupted by Clara's laughter. "Look at me! Look at me!" she shouted gleefully. Clara was standing on her own. The mountain air, fresh goat's milk, and good company had made her stronger. Then, with Heidi and Peter's help, Clara took small steps to the other side of the hill, arriving just in time for them to see the sunset together. When they got back to the house, Miss Roddenmeier was visiting with grandfather. They could not believe their eyes when they saw Clara walking. "But where is Clara's wheelchair?" asked Miss Roddenmeier. "I broke it out of jealousy," said Peter, "and I am very sorry." "I forgive you, Peter," said Clara. "You may have broken my wheelchair, but you also helped me learn how to walk." With that, Heidi, Peter, and Clara hugged, and grandfather declared Clara's recovery to be a miracle of the Alps and true friendship. Miss Roddenmeier and the Seasmans were forever grateful and promised that grandfather, Heidi, and Peter would never want for anything ever again. This is the end of the story. Did you like it? I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back soon with another story. Take care, sweethearts.